What's up, everyone? Alex here, and welcome to my little corner of the internet. I wanted to talk about how to tell that you have more than one gender, or at least just kind of a push in the direction of, hey, you have this experience. Have you considered multigender? Everyone's experience is going to be different. Not everyone has the same cultural experience with gender. Not everyone has the same, just because they experience this one thing doesn't necessarily mean they're multigender, but this is kind of my own experience and then talking about other people's experiences that you could use as kind of like a reference point, a jumping off point, where it's like, oh, I see this thing that you experience, and yeah, that's my experience, and maybe I am multigender. And it kind of is a way to inspire people to kind of look further into their own gender and their own experiences, and kind of, it's a way to learn more about oneself. So signs that might point to having more than one gender. For my own experience, for a while I had felt that there was some kind of complex gender experience that I didn't have a name for, but I was really desperate to give a specific name for that part of my identity. I had come out as a demi-boy in 2017. Not that I can remember now, but I think in 2017, I came out as a demi-boy, and that was just kind of that. Demi-boy. Got it. That's it. But then I started kind of questioning, like, if I'm demi-boy, what is this other part? And I became obsessed with knowing that there were two parts of my gender. Boy and then something else. Man and then something else. I was still kind of getting the hang of the demi-boy label. I don't say demi-boy. I say demi-guy, but just at the time, that's what I called it. I hadn't been out as trans for very long, so demi-boy was the way that I had kind of called it, because growing up I wasn't able to call myself a boy, so it's kind of the reason why a lot of trans people will use boy and girl instead of man and woman. It's usually because they did not have access to those terms before, and they're trying them out now. So I had my one label, demi-boy or man, just the one male label, and I found myself grasping for other labels. And obviously you can have multiple labels and not have those be all of your genders. I had just talked about how I use a multitude of labels, but not all of them are my genders. They're just descriptions of my two genders. But for me, finding this other label felt like it was something other than the man part of my gender. I knew whatever label I was looking for was not just a way to describe my manhood, but a way to be a separate aspect from my manhood. So there were already signs that there were two aspects to my identity that were separate, but existing together. And I hadn't really thought of this as bigender at the time, because I figured I was seeing my gender in parts. And bigender can be multiple aspects or parts if it wants to be. That some people use bigender in that way, and that's fine. I had used multiple different labels in the past. I used demi-boy, and then for me, part man, part neutral is what I kind of came to the conclusion of. So I was using terms like neutral male, Neptunian, just terms that implied man and then something else to go with it. Neptunian is masculine, not male, but there was something going on there that I was trying to figure out in my brain. And just at its core, just at the bottom of it all, having two main labels was important to me. That was like one singular label to describe that I'm a man or partially a man was not enough for me. I was looking for two distinct labels that I could use side by side. So for a while I was calling myself a Neptunian demi-boy, a neutral male, or a gender neutral man, things like that. I was always using these two different labels to describe my gender. So at some point, I just realized those are two genders just two distinct genders in and of themselves. So that's where I came out as bigender, realizing that, yeah, this is a bigender experience, this is a multigender experience. It might not always be the same case for other people. Someone else might want specifically to use two labels to describe a singular gender experience. So it's not always the case, but it works to kind of explore further if this is your kind of experience, wanting to use multiple labels, wanting to pinpoint a specific aspect of your identity that is separate from other aspects of your identity, specifically gender identity. I mean, even if you're wrong, it helps to look into your gender a little bit further, because then you know what you're not, and then you move on to exploring other parts of your gender. You really can't go wrong with, looking into a label and then realizing, it's not for me. If anything, it's beneficial to know for sure that is not your experience, so that you can move on and look at other things. So for other people, I have a list of examples that people gave me, because I had put out a question on the YB3 blog, and I was like, hey, how did you know that you had more than one gender? I'm curious, what were the signs of that? And I got a really good variety of responses. For some people, feeling more than 100% gender, feeling that you don't just have a full capacity of one gender. You feel like there's more than that. You have 120%, 150%, 200% gender. You feel like you are gender full. You have so much gender that, it's not enough to say, I'm at this point fully this one gender. I'm over here beyond the full capacity of gender. That's a really good sign that you might be multigender. If your presentation and expression changes a lot, sometimes that might mean you are trying to present or express as a multitude of genders. You don't always feel the need to express one way. You want kind of a spectrum of ways to present and express yourself. Sometimes being comfortable with multiple labels is a good sign that maybe you have more than one gender. Being one gender but feeling drawn to another gender, that's definitely been my experience, where I'm a man, but I'm very drawn to the concept of gender neutrality. If you find yourself being one gender but then feeling this draw toward another gender, can you imagine yourself using that label as, a distinct other part of your gender? Can you see yourself, I'm drawn to the Maverick label, but I'm a woman. Can you see yourself being both? That's a really good way to look at it. Sometimes feeling like there's some aspect of your gender that's missing or incomplete, trying to find something to fill a space. Sometimes that missing piece is void, as in gender void. Some people are gender void because there's an empty space where gender should be. And in this case, it doesn't really point to a multigender experience, but if you feel the need, if you feel like there's an intent to fill that empty void with something, that is a good sign that maybe this is a multigender experience. You can be gender void and then that empty space gets filled with something else, or you're looking to fill that space with something else. And so you might be agender and something else. Wanting to experiment with multiple labels, pronouns, ways of presenting yourself could be a good sign that you are multigender. Maybe you want to try on all these different things, and your intent might be to try on these different things and then land on a few that you're going to be using from here on out. So I want to try these 3 or 4 labels. I want to try presenting to match these labels, or using pronouns that might feel more like they've got the vibe of these labels. And I want to come out of it using full-time, permanently, the labels that I was trying out. Not wanting to give up one gender in order to be another gender. Maybe you're this one specific gender and you're looking at other labels, but you're not looking to drop the original label. You're looking to be both or one and several others. You don't see yourself dropping your previous label to replace it with some other label. Instead, you want to be both, all three, all four of them, etc. Sometimes an aspect of your gender, like masculine, feminine, neutral, genderless, gender quality, sometimes those end up being genders on their own. Sometimes you might end up saying, like, I'm a man, but there's also a feminine aspect of that manhood. And then it just turns out that feminine aspect was just another gender. So you're man and then some other gender to go along with it. Sometimes you feel like you're between two different genders and you might feel kind of a pull in different directions toward one or toward the other. And then it turns out that you are actually both these genders and you just feel, like you lean more one way than the other sometimes. You're fluid between these two different points on a spectrum, and that could point to being two genders and you just feel one more than the other sometimes. So sometimes your centrogender, your in-between gender, feels like it is actually two different genders that you're experiencing. So that's pretty much it. Sometimes there are signs that point toward having more than one gender. Sometimes not. This is not a universal model. It's my own experience that led me to realize that I'm multigender, and then other people's experiences that led them to realize that they're multigender. And, there could be so much more than this. People's experiences and preference of labels are so variable. Like, you never know. It just depends on the individual. You won't always experience these things and then come out of it realizing that you're multigender. Sometimes you just have these experiences and they are entirely monogender experiences. You have a singular gender and you feel like multiple labels can describe you. You feel like your gender is made up of multiple aspects. You are determined to use multiple distinct labels for yourself. Sometimes it just means that you prefer more than one label, and it doesn't automatically assume that you are multigender, but it's a good starting point, especially if you're questioning. You're thinking to yourself, like, I think I'm multigender, I think I'm bigender, I'm trigender, some kind of polygender, but I'm not absolutely sure. This is a good way to kind of get an idea of what other people's experiences are and how they came to the conclusion that they have more than one gender. So it helps to see other people's stories, experiences, what other people, what their genders are like. So that's kind of it. Just a little, just pulling back and talking more about the multigender experience. I feel like I kind of went beyond my own experiences because I wanted to focus on like genders and orientations and other such things that are similar to my own experience. But I kind of pulled the focus away from me a little too much over the past couple of years. So I wanted to kind of pull it back, go back into talking about being multigender, going more in depth into the bigender experience, etc., etc. So that's kind of all that was. Anyway, I'm signing off for now. See you later.